Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this the clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today, honestly, quite a white-pilling day for me, as, I am one of these, not just Twitter but also YouTube anons who happens to be right-wing, and it appears that 2025 is going to be the year where we start actually breaking into the mainstream. What do I mean by this? Well, you'll have to wait a little bit later because first I'm afraid I'm going to have to go through how not to be an online right-winger. I am just going to throw this out here right now and almost give you a trigger warning in a way, though I'm not going to be that pretentious about it. But if you are a fan of the Lotus Eaters, I'm not going to have too many good things to say about them for the next God knows how many minutes, probably 20 knowing me, as we go through an article that frankly is utter guff, but is going to be used as a springboard for me to give over my criticisms to the Lotus Eaters, and I do have plenty. Now, this is not coming away as a sort of, oh, I don't like these people, never will like these people, and I want nothing to do with them. However, I will be incredibly frustrated. I'm not going to do this whole I'm a critical friend thing, no. I am going to be quite annoyed because I know the Lotus Eaters can do better, and a lot of them are doing everything they can to not be taken seriously by anyone who's even close to being in an elite position in society. And it of course all starts off with this Byline Times article called "The Elon Musk Online Outriders Hope to Take Control of UK Politics and Oust Keir Starmer. The world's richest man is amplifying a series of often extreme alt-right voices bent on radically reshaping our politics." I think you can tell already, but this article is going to be utter guff, and I have far more criticisms of this article than the Lotus Eaters. However, as I say, it's going to be a good springboard for me to actually address the Lotus Eaters in a video, because I've done it in a few streams, and obviously I say things off the cuff there that come across probably as harsher and more standoffish than I really want to be with the Lotus Eaters, so this is a good excuse to do it. Anyway, let's get into it. So with Donald Trump now sworn in as the US president and unleashing waves of executive orders on everything from citizenship to the environment, the man who helped secure his victory, Elon Musk, has been busy trying to destabilise British politics. For the last few weeks, Musk has harnessed the power of the social network X to orchestrate a merciless attack on members of the Labour Party over supposed failures tackling Asian grooming gangs that have dominated the news agenda. Not particularly supposed, we actually know there have been failures, and literally not having a national inquiry into it is also a failure. Not supposed, it is not a supposed failure to not have a national inquiry, it just is one. This on January 8 led The Guardian to suggest that news in the UK appeared to be whatever Elon Musk says it is, and they just hate that, don't they? Whatever negatives that Elon Musk brings along with him, simply this alone, this fact alone that he is putting right-wing agendas in news headlines, makes him a net positive. I don't like everything he does. However, I am very thankful that a lot of things that I talk about are effectively put through Elon Musk's Twitter, which then makes it to headline news. Musk's attention was drawn to the issue, often relied on by the far right to advance anti-immigration sentiment, by a tweet from a contributor to Pimlico Journal on December 30 saying, "People should have hung for Rotherham. 7 men were jailed for a total of 106 years for sexually abusing 2 young girls in the 2000s. Yeah, and again, this is 2 of probably tens of thousands of young girls, by the way. And I don't even think the "people should have hung for Rotherham" is even true, even though "hung for Rotherham" is the wrong way of putting it. No, instead, I think all of this actually came from Max Tempers, who I'm definitely going to go into a little later, literally just posting sentencing notes and court notes from an Oxford trial that included such heinous acts I'm not going to repeat them, but to say that this is from Pimlico Journal isn't quite true. It's from a number of sources, but I definitely remember Max Tempers being one of the first ones, who again, as the Times article will go into after this, is a small account. Quite a small account, an anonymous right-wing account, and he has, for a number of stories actually, made headline news for his investigative journalism. Anyway, on to the good stuff. Since Musk first started tweeting about grooming gangs, the ex-owner had interacted with and amplified a constellation of anon accounts, podcasters and alt-right YouTubers that make up the very online far-right in Britain. Some of these individuals, such as British YouTuber Carl Benjamin, were part of the original wave of alt-right media personalities that fought on the so-called Great Meme War. I mean, it's ridiculous to call Carl Benjamin alt-right, obviously. But this helps spread Trump's message and inject his 2016 campaign with a sense of counterculture and anti-elite rebellion. Yes, and that is Byline Times doing an accidental self-report and effectively saying that they are not the anti-elite rebellion, they are instead the elite establishment. So well done, Byline Times, for that. In 2018, a report into this influence by think tank Data and Society named Benjamin, also known as Sargon of Akkad, as an important node in Trump's network, which I suppose, yes, that is kind of true. He ended up on Joe Rogan, for instance, and very much had a decent American audience that was supporting him. Back in 2018, when he had, God, I don't know, a few 100,000 subscribers, he never quite made it to 1 million, unfortunately. But anyway, Benjamin, who ran unsuccessfully in the 2019 European Parliament election as a UKIP candidate, had been repeatedly boosted by Musk to his 211 million followers since he began his crusade against Starmer. I don't know how true that is. I'm on Twitter quite a lot. I don't ever remember Musk say directly quote tweeting Carl. He may have done. I assume the Byline Times will tell us. Anyway, the Byline Times then go quickly into covering the whole UKIP rape man saga, which he's apologised for now, sure, but unfortunately it's something that Carl is never going to get away from, especially because he spent so many years not apologising for it, which, don't get me wrong, I have a history on my channel of effectively supporting him through that, and I basically think we've all grown up from them. So I'm not going to treat him too harshly. It's not exactly people supporting him with saying that he should have apologised, but, well, there we go. Anyway, it then goes into the Lotus Eaters. So it is named after a race of happy lottophages in the Odyssey, and is a far-right outlet that produces content about culture and philosophy, as well as commenting on British politics, and is also regularly promotes mass deportations, the idea of replacement migration, and attacks feminism. I mean, yes, I would say that it is fair to say that the people on the panel do constantly push for mass deportations, replacement migration, which is a problem, and attacks feminism. That is probably true, yes. The cast of presenters includes Dan Tubb and Bo Dade, both Reform UK candidates who were expelled from the party when old tweets resurfaced. I mean, okay. That is true, yes. I don't think it was just old tweets. I think in Bo's case it was things he kept saying on podcasts, interviews, as well as articles that he had written for the Mallard but were promptly deleted afterward. When it comes to Dan, it probably was due to his tweets. I don't really remember. I've looked into the Bo Dade situation more, and frankly, I think Reform were right to kick him out. You know, he was saying that Scotland was like a turd that won't flush. Can't really have that in a unionist party. To which every time he's asked about that, he has a different excuse. Either he was talking about it in a historical context, which when I've pushed back on him, no he hasn't. It then jumps to, it was just a joke though, to which the reply is, yes, but you're going to Parliament, you're not being a stand-up comedian. And at least in the past when I've pushed him on it, he effectively came to the conclusion, well, Reform should never have let him be a candidate, which is kind of the whole point of him being kicked out in the first place, so I'm glad he agrees with that. Dan, I don't really care as much, though. Stelios Panagiotou, I am very sorry, Stelios, if I got that wrong, a former philosophy lecturer, and from what I can tell, a lot of people, at least in my circles, favourite Lotus Eater. He definitely seems to be the one with his head on the straightest, and the person I find on Twitter agreeing with the most, so unfortunately you're in this list, Stelios. I'm sorry that they put you straight after Bo and Dan, who'd obviously been kicked out of Reform UK, at least in Bo's case. I think it was fair enough. The form of Benjamin, the journalist Connor Tomlinson, who they don't really seem to say much about, along with commentators making their name for the first time on the channel, like Harry Robinson and Josh Fern, who apparently the Byline Times don't have much to say about. So yes, that is the main cast. Commenting on Starmer's attempts to attack the Conservative with right-wing rhetoric on immigration, Dade said, no matter how strong the rhetoric is from Starmer, until I actually see the streets and towns of this country have less foreigners that have obviously come straight over, until I see that I don't believe any of it. And this is where my issue with the Byline Times article comes in. It's mainly this dross. Bo said nothing wrong there. That is fair enough. I am not going to believe Starmer is going to do anything about immigration until I see something actionable. Which he was right to say, because this week it turns out Starmer's making it easier for illegal migrants to get citizenship, so Dade was just right. However, it goes on to say, when discussing the fact that most common newborn boys' name for 2023 is Mohammed, Robinson said, It just shows that there is a massive Islamic foreign men in the country who should not be here. He added, it makes deportations a lot easier when you just go to M. Now, again, I know that this is Harry just making a joke, and it's a thing that's going to be common throughout this article. I have issues with the way the Lotus Eaters act fairly unprofessionally in some ways. This would be an example of that. You can talk about how this is a bit of a problem without giving your enemies the ammunition that they are obviously going to use against you. Now, the common retort to this is they're going to call you racist anyway, and the retort back from me is, well, okay, you have been not caring about that for some years now, and where's it got you? The answers we'll go through is not very far, and effectively it gives you a space on the internet to, I guess, blow off steam like this and make jokes like this, and sure, some of their paid content is pretty good stuff. Their history stuff's pretty good. The philosophy stuff's pretty good. When they get onto subjects like that are properly scripted, it's pretty good. It's all kind of undermined by this free podcast stuff, though, I would argue. And again, don't get me wrong, I understand that I have a history where I've made edgy jokes in the past. Hell, I still do make jokes on laughing at The Guardian and go overboard, because that's supposed to be entertaining. But hey, there's a reason that I keep that more entertaining stuff behind a paywall, and I try and keep my videos strictly professional these days. Goes on to say, this idea of conflict between the West and Islam informs other views that the presenters hold. Which again, it's not exactly the Byline Times saying they're wrong. In response to a video of the porn star Bonnie Blue offering to sleep with young men during Freshers Week, Tubbs said, if we are going to beat civilization back against Islam in Europe, putting back in place the restrictions on excessive female behaviour is absolutely necessary. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say I have no idea what those two things have to do with each other, but okay, Dan. He added, yes, that means jailing people like her for public indecency. It means treating women differently from men for essentially the same behaviour, because women are different. A man trying this would get nowhere, so it's not reality to pretend otherwise. Again, you can show your disapproval for people like Bonnie Blue and other OnlyFans influencers without jumping to this needlessly hyperbolic state. As I say, if you're trying to break into the mainstream and actually break stories and be a serious news journalist, magazine, website, whatever what you want to call yourselves, this isn't really the way to do it. But if you are content with having your niche on the internet for being the hyperbolic right-wingers, by all means, do that and stay there then. But the issue I have is that I know that there are Lotus Eaters who have more talent than this and could be doing more than this. And at the moment, I think it's holding you back, personally. The Byline Times then spreads its wings over to start talking about the New Culture Forum, which, as far as I care, is a much more professional outlet than the Lotus Eaters. So the New Culture Forum is a YouTube channel with over 300,000 subscribers, operated by the culture war think tank of the same name, run out of 55 Tufton Street. If you want to know how much of a meme this article is, the fact that they have mentioned that is literally just a signal to every left-winger watching this that this is part of some grand conspiracy of right-wing think tanks, when, you know, the reality is that it's about 2 or 3 think tanks in 55 Tufton Street, and every other right-wing think tank they just say runs from there, and it's just not true. Anyway, Harrison Pitt, one of the presenters at the New Culture Forum, has appeared on Lotus Eaters. Tomlinson hosts shows on both channels, and Benjamin recently appeared as a guest on the New Culture Forum's youth show, Deprogrammed. Yeah, that tends to happen when you have a bit of a network. I'd like to point out at this point that the Byline Times has journalists such as Otto English who end up being in a network with the likes of Carol Vorderman, James O'Brien, and other left-wing pundits who are quite big on social media. You know, it's just the same as that. It's a network. Yeah, well done. The NCF also features a rotating cast of GB News pundits and right-wing newspapers and magazine columnists. Like the Lotus Eaters, the discussions on Deprogrammed often occur in the idiom of memes from the online right. Presenters often use a term like elite human capital, gay race communism, or gin-brained, and other coinages from Cunley Drupka, an ex-account popular on British radical right, whose memes have been quoted on GB News, in The Telegraph, and by Tucker Carlson. Yes, Cunley Drupka is the one who made the Nick 30 years old meme. Well, he may not have created it, but he certainly popularised it and adapted it away from, I believe it was French at first, to British, and then I think he eventually made some for pretty much every major country in the world, and even one for Nigeria. And it basically made Nigerians say, wow, I can't even be mad at this racist, he just got everything correct here. But yes, once again, it's some of this network is stronger than it is loose. New Culture Forum and the Lotus Eaters are obviously kind of sister publications of each other, given that Connor Tomlinson is a prominent employee of both. And again, as is being shown here, what can the Byline Times actually say? Oh, Cunley Drupka's a bit of a racist. Oh, they keep using these buzzwords like elite human capital, gay race, communism, and gym-brained. Some of these are racist, some of these are sexist, some of these are homophobic. It's not very good, is it? We've got to tut at them. And it's just a horrendous article for that. Give me something interesting. Don't just tell me that they use internet memes. Anyway, this cultural politics of memes and alt media, now developing in Britain, was a significant part of Trump's campaign and an insurgent in 2016, and the wider cultural shift that followed during his wake of his re-election campaign in 2024. Much control of X helped cement the dominance of MAGA on the Republican right in the run-up to the re-election and is now boosting the British alt and far right. Oh, there's a difference between them now, apparently. Yes, well, at this point I would say I don't think you have much to worry about Byline Times. As mentioned before, Lotus Eaters have put themselves into a niche and seem happy to stay there, which if that's what they want to do, fine. Their influence into mainstream is effectively all down to Connor Tomlinson, who, while I appreciate that a lot of his politics are indeed good, I think his time really is limited when it comes to his mainstream influence, just because of these associations, really. The Lotus Eaters are quite poisonous when it comes to an awful lot on the right. They don't like how hyperbolic they are, whether they're serious or not about their politics. When they are being hyperbolic doesn't really matter. They can't help but keep giving ammunition to not even just left-wing outlets, even centrist outlets that make them toxic. It's not that difficult to end up with clips and quotes that even the Byline Times have gone into, that even I said, yeah, sure, they're being politically incorrect and they are going beyond probably what they need to be saying. And even if we lived in the perfect world, I still think it would be seen as uncouth by too many people. And it's an awful lot like when the whole Liz Truss interview happened. Now, it was a good interview that Connor Tomlinson did with Liz Truss, and I did appreciate it. However, it should have been seen as absolutely inevitable, well, it's seen by absolutely inevitable to me, that having her on the Lotus Eaters and garnering attention was obviously going to bring the wrath of mainstream news down on them. And the thing is that, yeah, sure, an awful lot of people will just be saying, oh, well, they're not politically correct, that's not bad. And I'm not saying they need to be politically correct, as we will go through. Max Tempers is anything but politically correct. However, I think there is absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind that there almost seems to be competition in the Lotus Eaters as to be the edgiest boy on the panel. By no means is this applicable to all of them. Stelios would be my example of someone who doesn't care to be an edgy boy. But doing so isn't going to garner you too much support or too much influence. As I say, it's going to keep you in your niche. But we're at a point where the right are actually on the rise, and we're at a point where you actually have a chance to have influence. It's probably salvageable, but my god, you have to professionalise. And even the Byline Times have noticed this. The Lotus Eaters are part of a growing ecology of radical right digital media in the UK and performs an outrider function for Reform UK, urging Farage to be stronger and promoting Rupert Lowe, Reform's MP for Great Yarmouth. Yeah, I do always find it funny that the Lotus Eaters seem to be in the mindset that Rupert Lowe's just this randomer that joined Reform like last year, when in reality he wrote most of the contract. Which makes it even funnier when, Carl's posted, oh, I don't really know what Reform would really want if they got in power. And it's turned out that Rupert Lowe's wrote most of the contract that is free online to read, and it just looks like they've never bothered to read it. Which, again, if you are a professional political pundit, you should probably be well aware of what's in manifestos at the very least. The channel's commitment to pushing reform even further to the radical right is evident in the presence of one of its presenters, Gláeddyv, as Reform UK candidate in the 2024 election that was dropped after Hope Not Hate revealed he had published a policy document which proposed the expulsion of foreigners and their dependents and prosecution of civil servants and judges, calling them a cancer that must be cut out regardless of the disruption it caused. Yeah, he said that. I think he also... I don't think he said every foreigner, to be fair, but he did also... I think he called immigrants a plague or something like that. Just, again, this hyperbolic language, which I understand what he's trying to say, and largely his ideas in that article weren't bad. I mean, I don't think you need to prosecute civil servants and judges necessarily, but anyway. Clearly, again, I understand he's going hyperbolic. I'm sorry, you're not going to have people giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm only doing it because I like Carl, really. I don't really like Bodade, to be honest with you. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I trust Carl isn't going to be hiring people who are, as much as Carl says that he's not a liberal anymore, he is. He's just trying to change the whole way that we look at things, the lens that we look at the world with. He is still largely a classical liberal, though. And so I'll trust that he won't be hiring open racists or open neo-Nazis, say, or things like that. So this is why I'm giving an awful lot of benefit of the doubt to Dade. But if you're going to be hyperbolic like this, obviously people are going to get on your case for that, and you're going to put Reform UK in a position where, you know, either they have to say we're giving him the benefit of the doubt, or just say, well, he's a loose cannon, we can't do anything with him. And so, yeah, he got kicked out, which, again, I can completely understand. And you might say, oh, well, you shouldn't just do what Hope Not Hate say. Well, you shouldn't give Hope Not Hate ammunition, would be my reply. After he was dropped by the party, Dade tweeted, I stand by every word, which, again, isn't really helping my benefit of the doubt case. Benjamin also regularly used his position at the channel to argue against Farage distancing himself from the UK's most well-known far-right figure, Tommy Robinson. Benjamin is a regular speaker at Robinson's rallies. Yeah, there's this whole thing where Tommy Robinson has a whole network around him. Carl Benjamin's part of it, Maya Tusi's part of it, Lawrence Fox is part of it. Effectively, Tommy Robinson, because he can command, you know, probably at most 100,000 people to come to rallies and protests and mobilise them to things like that, he will give these people a platform and promote them, and in return, effectively, they will swear fealty and give him support. In reality, you'll never see me doing that because I don't think Tommy Robinson's a great person. I think, frankly, he's deserved to go to jail. He committed contempt of court 10 separate times on 10 separate charges. Yeah, no duh, he's in jail. He even pled guilty to it. What do you expect? But yeah, this is another thing why the Lotus Eaters are just not going to have much influence on the right. They keep asking Reform to do the stupidest things imaginable. And they keep, you know, the old argument was, oh, they're not top of the polls yet. Why aren't they top of the polls? They should be doing way better than this. Clearly, they just need to go on about remigration, mass deportation, and stand by Tommy Robinson. Anyway, they've barely done any of that, and they're top of the polls. I say barely because Rupert Lowe did say the magic words mass deportation, and everyone from the Lotus Eaters to the right of them just exploded with happiness. Anyway, as mentioned, the rest of the article's pretty guff. The only other section I wanted to read was that Pimlico's Journal's analysis has been endorsed by Tory MP Neil O'Brien, and Musk recently shared a post from one of the magazine's young contributors indicating that its readership extends into the halls of power. And that's something I kind of wanted to mention here. Lotus Eaters established itself 5 years ago now, and realistically, whenever it's spreading influence anywhere, it's effectively getting the mainstream to turn against them. Which again, if that's all they're trying to do, then fine, but your influence is only going to go so far if you do that. Because we're at a point where the mainstream is dying, it is not dead yet. And frankly put, I don't think everyone in the mainstream is useless and is an enemy. In The Guardian, you know, maybe, but certainly The Telegraph, there's a lot of people who are on our side, someone like Fraser Nelson. As much as I have a soft spot for Fraser Nelson because he did overlook The Spectator as it grew rapidly and was the kind of vanguard in the mainstream of right-wing thought. The Telegraph have some decent people. The Times even have a couple of decent people. They have some absolute howlers there as well. But there's no point turning the entirety of the mainstream against you, especially when they still have so much influence. And this is where places like Pimlico Journal are good, because they are right-wing pretty firmly. However, they're not there to try and make enemies of the mainstream. They are there to push their influence over there, whereas Lotus Eaters, all they seem to really want to do is make enemies with the mainstream. It's fine if that's what you want to do, but you could be doing so much more than that. Anyway, at this point I think I will move over to the Anons, or not quite Anons, who are actually shaping British right-wing talking points. On multiple fronts, by the way. Meet the random British blokes who took the grooming scandal global. The disproportionate impact of 2 tweets in a right-wing ecosystem shows how power, influence and cultural norms are shifting. And I want to make the point as well, I actually sent this article to my dad to say this is what our side of Twitter does. This was something I was actually kind of proud to show to my parents and say, I'm not a massive name in that or anything like that. I am, however, mutuals with these people, and I do chat to these people. I do have some sort of influence there. I'm actually happy to say that. I've not been able to say that about the Lotus Eaters for about 3 or 4 years. I'm just going to make that point. So, a lot like the Byline Times article, it starts off with the grooming gang scandal, though this one doesn't try to downplay it. A story that first broke more than a decade ago surfaced again at the start of January. It seems to do so out of nowhere. However, the fresh furore was triggered by 2 tweets from accounts on X run by young men whose names you will never have heard, and who have fewer than 40,000 followers between them. Yeah, quite small, hell of a lot of influence though from the looks of it. Those tweets had an astonishing impact. By midway through last month, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, was on her feet in Parliament announcing a national rapid audit examining the social and cultural drivers of grooming gangs, plus 5 local inquiries. Which, given these 2 men actually wanted national inquiries, I suppose they'll just have to get what they're given with these scraps. The story of how this happened and how these 2 young men and the online world they inhabit offers a remarkable insight into the way power, influence and cultural norms are shifting in Britain. So, at 8:55 PM on December 30, an ex-account called Max Tempers posted a screenshot from the sentencing of members of a grooming gang in Oxford, which contained horrific details of physical and sexual abuse. See, this is why Byline Times are useless. Even when they're trying to have a go at Lotus Eaters, they can't get their story straight on what actually happened, because they just get it wrong. At times, though, they did their work. Max Tempers is a pseudonym for a man in his 20s who works in the financial service industry in London. His ex-account has 13,500 followers, work has strict social media policy, explains, and I wouldn't talk about some subjects quite so frankly in real life. Same thing here, mate, so don't worry about it. Tempers' tweet about grooming gangs instantly went viral, and part of the screenshot soon reached the timeline of Elon Musk, who shared it, adding the government officials responsible, including those in the judiciary, need to be fired in shame over this. And 2 minutes later, Musk replied with 2 exclamation marks to a tweet from Sam Bidwell, a 24-year-old British law graduate who works at the Adam Smith Institute, a right-wing think tank, but posts from his personal X-account listing 20 towns he described as scarred by migrant sex abuse. Musk then began posting about the scandal to his 215 million followers. Suddenly it was everywhere. British politicians picked up on the surge and it dominated the national conversation. Yet this is the general pipeline from posting to policy, and it's all thanks to Elon Musk being a bit of a loose cannon with his own Twitter account, which he is free to do now that he owns the damn thing. Again, he does things that I think are remarkably stupid, but at the same time I cannot fault the guy. He clearly is a net positive when he's managing to get incredibly smart and independent journalists like Max Tempers and talented think tank researchers like Sam Bidwell putting their points forward to the national news and to national headlines and into Parliament, to the point that it forced Labour to have to react in some way. And sure, we get some scraps, but that's more than we would have got 2 or 3 years ago, even with the Tories. And it's at this point I have to say, this is more than what the Lotus Eaters have done. I kinda hate to say it because I don't want to seem too harsh. But speaking realistically here, when has the Lotus Eaters managed to, well, find anything like Max Tempers is fine, go through the court documents, find out details on a case, put it onto their website, then post it to Twitter, and then not even a day or 2 late, well, I suppose it was a few days later, given he posted it right before New Year. However, when have they managed to post to policy, so to speak? They haven't, and this is why I am saying that right-wing anonymous accounts at the moment are more useful and better for right-wing causes than the Lotus Eaters. This is what I mean by they can definitely improve. Given that what Max Tempers is doing in his free time is what, in theory, Lotus Eaters should be doing for their full-time job. Neither of these 2 young men campaign on the issues of grooming gangs. Tempers' post in December was his first ever post on the topic, he says, nor were Bidwell and Tempers coordinating. It was genuinely a complete coincidence, Bidwell insists, and I believe them. I believe that they're probably in each other's DMs now, but honestly, it's very emergent behaviour on right-wing Twitter. Someone will post something and then everyone on the right wing will post about it if it gets enough traction. This is what happened with Tempers and Bidwell. I say someone, it's actually probably a few people posting about the same thing and then everyone does it to try and get on the bandwagon. It's fine. I do it. Everyone does it on X. It's totally understandable. Astonishingly, this isn't the first time Tempers' account has had a disproportionate impact on global politics. It was Tempers who first tweeted a screenshot from LinkedIn that indicated Labour Party staffers were heading to the US to assist the Democrats during the presidential election, and within 6 hours it had reached Musk, He says, and within a day, Trump was tweeting about it. Sir Keir Starmer was forced to downplay the story. I've done a bit of damage to the special relationships. Tempers jokes. So how did these tweets from two random British blokes have such an extraordinary impact? Bidwell and Tempers have relatively small followings, but they are part of a much wider ecosystem of British right-wing accounts that are thriving on Musk's platform. Ex-users have identified from within this broad group a posting to policy pipeline. Hence I keep saying it because it's a real phenomenon. A reference to the ability of young ideologues to shape and move the world simply by posting on their X accounts and finding the right amplification. This is where this Times journalist goes a bit wrong. These aren't young ideologues. At best you can say Sam Bidwell is, given he's part of the Adam Smith Institute think tank, which actually used to be radically on the side of open borders, but clearly Bidwell is pushing massively against that, which shows just how the vibes have shifted yet again. But yeah, Tempers is just a guy with a job who posts about what he's interested in. You know, he's not ideologically against giving anyone benefits who's on PIP, for instance. Max Tempers is quite literally just a normal guy, so I don't like the fact they've called them ideologues, but either way, ideologues are definitely on this pipeline, is what I'd say. Some social media users, such as Bidwell or Lawrence Newport, who ran a successful campaign calling for a ban on XL bully dogs, operates under their own names and hew fairly closely to the political mainstream. You know, good on them again for the posting to policy pipeline. I don't really actually agree with banning XL bully dogs. Again, it's more of an owner thing. They just need to understand that their dogs are likely going to want to actually maul people, and they should probably actually take precautions with that. Anyway, that's by the by. Others are pseudonyms such as Drupka Cunley, oh, he's been mentioned again, with nearly 100,000 followers and deal in edgy humour, memes and several layers of irony, some veer into racist territory. I'm kind of fine with that profile of Dukpra. I would generally agree with that. He definitely veers into racist territory, and I don't think he's ashamed of that. However, he is very funny, and he does, frankly, just post an awful lot of stuff that is just what is going on in the UK. And his memes are very high effort. And, you know, just to go back to the Lotus Eaters, you can be funny. I'm not saying don't make jokes. You can even make edgy jokes if you want. The problem is that you have to do them, one, quite rarely, and two, you will get away with it an awful lot more if you had your whole shtick be what Drupka Cunley's is, which is effectively be there to make serious points through his comedy, edgy humour and memes. The Lotus Eaters was never supposed to be about that, and that's why it's kind of not working for you. What many of these accounts share is a despair at the state of Britain and a deep concern about immigration. Circumstances have changed a lot and pushed people toward the right, says Tempers, who claims he never thought about immigration until what he calls the Boris wave a couple of years ago, when rates tripled. Simultaneously, he says for middle-class people of his age, opportunities have gone away. And this is something else that is just completely true. It's something I keep mentioning. Pretty much everyone I know between the ages of 20 and 40 are all thinking about leaving the country. Quite seriously as well. They don't want to stay here because they can see that Britain is in decline. What they remember from when they were 8, 9 or 10, in fact what they were told their life was going to be like, has not materialised in any way. And they see other people and other countries that are doing better and materialising opportunities and giving them a life that they may want, and it's making them want to go over there. And it doesn't help that basically everyone I know in Britain has kind of an okay life and they can get by, and then I know a nurse and a shop manager over in Australia who moved thanks to my help, by the way, who are on, you know, triple the wages they were on here and own a bungalow with a pool and are currently thinking about having kids. And then there's me being an idiot going to uni, only just managing to scrape by a house. Turns out I just need to go to Australia and wait a year. Same with other people I know who went to uni. They're getting by. They don't feel like they're massively improving their life over in their 20s, which is really when you should be massively improving your life. It's when you shoot up from minimum wage jobs to effectively establishing your career. And the best way people are really doing that at my age is, well, moving abroad. This speaks to a wider shift to the right among young people, particularly men. Pretty much entirely men, to be honest. The people who are young and right-wing are definitely more strident about it, more interested in sweeping changes, Bidwell adds. Totally agree, and it's something that is definitely happening with the older generation, just at a slower rate. In this world, Reform UK is more popular than the Tories, mirroring TikTok, where Farage has 1.2 million followers, and the Tories have 85,600. Oof. Specifically, many of these ex-users and online influencers are enthused by Rupert Lowe, the Reform MP, who Musk said recently should lead the party. He seems to speak their language, and he's not going to lead the party. There's no point. He's better as a supporting role to Farage. Bidwell acknowledges that within the broader ecosystem, some fairly unsavoury characters are hiding behind anonymous accounts and coming out with overtly racist stuff. Yeah, that's true. And it's that sort of stuff that if you acknowledge and say, this is the stuff I don't like, it gives you way more influence and respect and can put you in better positions. Many of the accounts that do not traffic in racism still speak about migration in ways that would be unnerving to their older counterparts. Young people are more willing to say the more radical stuff, said James Price, 33, who had worked for Naheem Zawali, the former Tory chancellor, and had been active on the online right for a long time. If you're 23 right now, you're thinking, what's the point? You're so down on the future of the country, so you might as well say the really punchy stuff. Kind of true. I have to say, I've established myself more in a career as I've got older. I'm now looking back on my older stuff, especially my streams, and thinking, don't really want that affecting my career, and so you'll say less punchy stuff. Although I largely hold similar positions to those I held, 5 years ago, I've definitely changed in quite a few of the ways. I'm probably less free market now than I was a few years ago, and I'm certainly harsher on the cultural stuff than I was 5 years ago. Effectively, I've moved from being a libertarian to a conservative. That's what's happened here. And what's my biggest issues with reform? The parts where they're being a bit progressive, say with their ideas for electoral reform and changing the Lords to be another elected chamber. Don't like those two things. They happen to be reform's most liberal positions as well, so that's where I am now. But it's absolutely right. If you're 23, feel like you're not going to get a job here, you may as well just say what you like anyway. People are maturing later from the looks of it as well, so that's probably also got something to do with it. Even among the less radical, says Chris Collins, 22, a conservative-leaning classic student at Oxford, young people feel less pressure now than they did 3 or 4 years ago to conform to the wishes of left-wing majority and what they say, think and do. This is a generation of digital natives. They understand better than their parents or even their older siblings how to post and get noticed. That is definitely true. I have a brother who's 10 years older than me. There's no way he'd post like I post. Previously, right-wingers were mocked for their inability to post successfully, but this is no longer the case. What's the news story in the UK, whatever Elon Musk says it is, fretted The Guardian at the height of the grooming gang scandal? Maybe, but maybe in the future it's whatever Max Tempers says it is. Whoever he may be. Please allow it to be the case. Max Tempers is excellent at finding the issues that we have in modern Britain and constantly pushing it for a more reasonable policy. Today, in fact, he's been posting about the ridiculous decision by our judges and our courts to effectively set equal pay between warehouse workers who have to operate forklifts and people in Asda who have to stack shelves. It's a ridiculous decision. It's been talked about before, but no doubt it's going to be in the national news soon simply because Max Tempers is talking about it. Why is that, you may ask? Well, I'm going to conclude with some of my thoughts on why this is. So these Twitter accounts of, men in their 20s who are either the Max Tempers types who are anonymous or not quite as anonymous, such as the Pimlico journals, Nigel Forrester, for example, or Sam Bidwell of the ASI. Why are they so much more effective, having really come into prominence really over the last 6 or 7 months than the Lotus eaters basically have managed in 5 years when it comes to influencing British politics, British conversation, and even directly resulting in policy? Well, I think there's a few reasons. One, it's the professionalism I've gone through. Even when they started off and Carl was saying no swearing, they were still having their swearing in there. It's not quite like how it is with GB News, where they have a pretty obvious standard, and journalists who have broken them have been kicked off. Say, Dan Wootton, I'd say, was fairly unfair, but then Lawrence Fox they've never had on since he started saying the ridiculous stuff about that Politics Joe journalist, was it Ava Santiago, I think it is, can't remember her name, I apologise. Someone else, I can't remember his name as well, he was kicked off GB News recently for smoking live on air when you're not allowed to do that before the watershed, possibly even after the watershed, I can't remember, but he got kicked off for that. There's clearly lines here that GB News will not allow you to cross. Lotus eaters, they just cross the line all the time, even if they have I don't think they really have a line though, and it just makes them too toxic to really touch. Obviously, Liz Truss did that interview with Connor Tomlinson after she was kicked out as Prime Minister, but she was just trying to go round and say, hello, I will do a load of interviews, here's my book. She was trying to get anywhere and everywhere, and, you know, okay, it's good that she got on it, but at the end of the day, what were all the articles about? Oh, here are quotes from the Lotus Eaters. They seem mental. That's all you really need to know about them, and that's all you're going to do if you keep giving them that ammunition. Again, you can talk about all this stuff, and you can even make edgy jokes. You've just got to pick and choose which one you have and which ones you allow to publish. This is the difference with Max Tempers. Why is he taken so seriously? As we say, it's happened plenty of times, because he manages to get first-hand accounts and first-hand sources for what he's talking about, such as the Oxford Court note and, of course, the LinkedIn post. He posts it to Twitter without swearing, he posts it to Twitter without directly making fun of people or being nasty to people, or even, he's not even politically incorrect, I'd say. There's probably some stuff he says, especially about Pip, that flies a bit close to the sun, but that's typically in the replies. And most people are just going to be seeing the big main tweet that he makes, effectively saying, look how ridiculous Pip is, it's costing us £60 billion a year or something. Again, with first-hand sources, which is something I, at least from their podcast, is something I quite rarely see from the Lotus Eaters. They will mainly get second-hand news articles and react to that. And don't get me wrong, I do that too, but there are also plenty of times where I go to the first-hand sources and read through it for you. I've done that with plenty of videos, and they tend to be quite popular and people have good things to say about those videos, so I'm happy you like them. However, I post on YouTube. I don't post to X with these things probably as much as I should, and that causes a bit of an issue because, one, my videos are not as punchy as Max Tempers. Max Tempers, one tweet, usually within the 240 character limit. That allows for the whole thing to be read. He gets straight to the point, he summarises the issue, he has an image to go with it. It's easy for someone like Elon Musk to just see and go, wow, this is insane, how can this happen? Lotus Eaters will sometimes have a first-hand source, but they will add in some spicy language to spice it all up a bit, and it won't really lead to newspapers wanting to pick it up. Someone like Max Tempers seems an awful lot more approachable. Obviously, people like Sam Bidwell have a bit of an inbuilt advantage working for an already established think tank, who are well respected, but it doesn't really matter that at that point. Max Tempers is being taken quite seriously and no one really knows who he is. But mark my words, when the history books are written about this period of history, Max Tempers' name will come up. And I don't even think it'll be a footnote. Anyway, the final more general thing I think is why they are becoming so popular as well is, frankly, it's a bit of a mixture of Elon Musk buying Twitter, but these people only really started exploding after Labour got into power. And I think it's because now Labour are in power, and you can say that this was part of the zero-seat strategy, if you really want, but what has happened is people now have their hand on the stove. Labour are in power, there is no more excusing, oh, it's the right wing, it's the Tories, and now people are realising, oh, there's an awful lot of people on the right who really didn't like the Tories because they were left-wing. And it's got to the point where even my Normie parents are openly saying that now. I've been saying that for about 5 years, and they'd always say, oh, don't be so ridiculous. But it's got to the point where they don't have a choice but to say, oh yeah, clearly they are. They let in 1 million people the other year, for God's sake. So because of this, I think a lot of attention is now going to, oh, where are people saying things that are actually different to what all the mainstream have been saying for years? Because clearly it turns out, you know, maybe Matt Goodwin's correct. Maybe our assumptions are all wrong. And now obviously with the Tories out of power as well, they're trying to search for other topics to hop upon to put pressure on the government. And again, that comes from Max Tempers. That comes from areas of the online right that aren't just going to be like Fraser Nelson, who are trying to say that immigration is a success story when absolutely nobody in Britain is buying that anymore. You know, there are even Lib Dem accounts that are now saying, listen, we can't just keep saying immigration's great. Nobody's believing us and we'll never stay in power if we keep saying it. So it's the vibe shift as well that has led to this. However, just to be frank, the Lotus Eaters don't seem to have ridden that vibe shift quite well. They still seem to be too far outside of the Overton window to be taken seriously. And to be honest with you, I think that they seem to be happy there. But they just have to accept that being happy there means that they're not going to have overall influence on the national conversation at large. They're just going to be seen as, well, like InfoWars, like the weirdos on the right. That's how they're going to be seen. As much as people like Alex Jones, and as much as he is a meme, not many people take what he says seriously. They don't. It's just a reality of the situation. So it's just something I want to make clear. One, go follow Max Tempest and Sam Bidwell on Twitter. They are excellent people for being kept up to date with what the next talking point's going to be from the right. Two, they do incredibly good, frankly, independent journalism. I mean, I didn't go through, but even the comments in this Times article, they were all singing the praise of these people, saying, this is what we expect from journalists. Why aren't you doing it? They're doing it in their free time. They're really worth a follow. Go follow them. Lotus Eaters, as I say, you know, if you want to be entertained, watch the Lotus Eaters. I think that's the best way to put it. You know, I'm not going to say don't watch them. I'm not going to say they're useless. I will say there is room for improvement, and I know that they can do better. You know, I hope that they take my criticisms in good faith. I hope that they are still willing to come onto the channel to have streams and what have you, because they are, you know, they're intelligent people at the end of the day. They're just in an environment that encourages them to bring out their spicier side, I think is what we should say here. And it's unfortunately affecting the influence that they could have. There's an opportunity cost to all this, and I think they should bear that in mind. And where do I fit into all this? Well, I'm kind of at the peripheries of, well, both these circles, to be honest, but I'm gravitating towards the ones that are on the actual posting to policy pipeline, because clearly that is where influence will actually be exerted by the network that we have. I'm loosely connected to both networks. I'm happy with that. If I want to be more involved with it, I easily can be. Post more to them, interact with them more, find first-hand sources, post them to Twitter, and, well, they'll notice, and they will notice. Max Tempers checks out my timeline. If he sees anything there that he likes, he reposts it. It's good stuff. I'm part of this pipeline. I'm happy with that. I don't need to be the person at the top of it, and I'm happy that my influence is there too, and I hope to grow it as well. So I guess on that point, it's time to shill. Over on the Worcester Club tonight, we are back with the geopolitics of antiquity, where we will have another lecture from Jack about the Peloponnesian War. From what I remember, we're about halfway through it, and we're on stream like 8 or something, so it's a big series. We're still going through it. If you're that interested in it, go back and watch the old ones, but you can pretty much come in at any time and we'll give you a recap and continue from there. Wednesday, it is Tosh Talks, and we are going to be answering the question, do feminists have a point? Because as time's gone on and all the dust has settled around feminism and it's kind of gone to the wayside at this point, we have to ask, did they have any points with everything they were pushing? And, well, I don't really know what the answer's going to be honest. I think in some ways they probably did have a point. But anyway, as for other streams from me this week, if you're lucky, you'll get another relaxed gaming one, possibly Friday. Don't know yet. With someone from the community, maybe you'll be on as well. Maybe my co-host, who knows. No promises with that, it just might happen. Videos, though, out as and when I can make them, pretty much daily, every weekday at this point, so if you're a fan of that, then support my channel. You can support it by subscribing, commenting, or leaving a comment telling me what you think. That is really easy and free ways to help me out with the algorithm. If you think I deserve a little bit more direct support, there is always the option to become a member from £2 a month. That also gives you access to all my old Laughing at the Guardians, which I have over 100 episodes of, so that's pretty good value for money if you ask me. But you can also give a super chat or super thanks if you think I deserve a one-off bonus as well. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.